everyone. Today we're going to discuss what you need to do to prepare your car for a track day. So, first things first, we're going into safety, right? One of the requirements all the tracks are going to have is a strict safety requirement for a helmet, right? And like SCCA requires a specific Snell spec. Now, as far as any additional safety gear, I mean, technically, right, you really should have a fire extinguisher within arm's reach. If you're gonna do that, find a way to make it very secure, because you don't want that thing breaking off in an accident and then actually hurting you more than what good it would do. You gotta remember, you're not racing, you're driving your car on a track. There's a difference, and that's the number one safety related rule that you should know, right? It's not even really time trials, right? The idea is that you're experiencing what it's like to drive your car around a track safely, but near the limits, because you're on a track in a controlled environment. You are responsible for the safety of everybody around you and vice versa. And unlike a public road, the idea is that you're all smart, semi-intelligent people who want to track their car and have respect for other people's cars and lives and want to keep everybody around you safe. And if that means that you're slowed down behind somebody for a couple laps or half a lap or whatever, so be it. You can keep yourself safe with basically whatever car you're driving. The number one thing you just got to watch out for is overheating your brakes. And as long as you don't do that, whether that means pulling into the pits, whether that means coasting into turns a little bit, as long as you find a way to not do that, then you're going to be okay. You're going to be good. So like I have the radar detector up there, I'll take that down, and I'll even take the mount off typically, just because it's just one less thing to kind of distract you or fall off while you're on the track. You want to clear everything out of your car. Like, I even get the stuff out of the glove box and the trunk and all that stuff. A, for weight, but B, there's so much force on a track when you're cornering and everything. You're going to hear that stuff sloshing around in the trunk or wherever it is. And other than just being annoying and potentially damaging your car a little bit, that could also become a distraction, because all that stuff moving around in the car is just like something you're now thinking about when you should be thinking about your tires and where other cars are and traction and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's the thing. Like, you just want as little distractions as possible, and you have to drive with your windows down. That's one of the rules, so that, you know, God forbid you do get in an accident, they can get to you easier. So since the windows are open the whole track day, you have to you don't want any papers or anything inside the car, because they're gonna fly around and leave the windows. If you have a sunroof like I do, I would just keep it, I mean, you can't have it physically open, but even just the shade for it, like, I'd keep the shade closed so you don't get like a weird blast of sunlight and then it blinds you, right? Like, anything you would do on the street to mitigate or to help be able to see and mitigate distraction is just 10x more important on the track, from the perspective of you need to be 100% focused on driving and piloting that vehicle. Ready to now go do a track day, kind of. So you gotta figure out the mechanicals of your car. So I'll take my car for an example, right? This is a 92,519 mile Camaro. That's not particularly high by street driving standards, and not necessarily even by track driving standards, but anytime you subject a car to track use, you are going to accelerate its wear. Now, three big things that you're going to accelerate wear on, I would say, and you're going to wear other stuff too, but engine, brakes, tires. Those are kind of the three main things I look at, and here's why. Tires, obviously, you're pushing them to the limits all day. They're going to wear out fast. Brakes, same idea, right? You're pushing them to the limits, they're going to wear out. Your engine, you might say to yourself, well, if I have good oil and I'm not like over-revving the engine, why does it matter? Well, that's true for the most part. A lot of cars I've found don't really have adequate oil cooling. So this Camaro, for example, I actually added an aftermarket oil cooler on because it would get surprisingly hot on track days. I mean, it's a known thing. If you go on forums, you can see even the 1LE Camaro, which is designed to be like a track day car, didn't come with any extra oil cooling over an SS. As a result, it would sure everything is happy. And as long as you're doing that, you should be okay. And if you got to pull into the pits and just chill out for a little bit, you just might have to do that. Another thing that you should really consider is like little stuff, right? Mechanically speaking. Before every track day, or at least before every track season, you really should jack that car up and give it a full-blown thorough inspection, because you're going to find that from previous track day use, your car will have little quirks of things that break, right? And then you have your normal wear and tear, ball joints and bearings and different bushings and stuff like that, compounded by the fact that you're also doing track days. You're going to find that various things do wear out. Along those lines, you have to accept the fact that your car will probably not last as long. Just make sure your oil is pretty fresh. I personally try to change it before I do a track day, so call it within 1,000 miles of when I changed it, just so that it's really fresh for the track day. And then that oil change, unless you do oil testing and stuff like that, you might just want to run that like half your normal interval if it was just street driving. And that might be kind of extreme, but those 70 miles have taxed the crap out of that oil compared to your normal driving. So it's probably worth just changing it quite a bit premature, unless you're getting test data to prove otherwise, just to be on the safe side so that you don't hurt your motor. The fact that you'll need to accept as well is you're going to burn a copious amount of fuel. So I find that this car gets about 4 to 5 miles per gallon on track, and at least the one track day I've done in South Carolina, you drive about 70 miles worth of track time, so you burn most of the tank of fuel. So I top off with 93 octane before I go enter the track at the closest gas station, and then by the time I get back out, I can only drive another 50 miles or whatever until I really need fuel, because I just burnt 3/4 plus of a tank in 70 miles. So your fuel economy will be atrocious, and then that does add cost to the track day. Additionally, if your car recommends premium or recommends some certain fuel, I would highly recommend you run it. If you cheat a little bit on the street and run lower octane, that's fine, most of the time, right? But when you're putting a car under that much stress, give it the fuel that it wants. And if you have any sort of a performance engine, even consider, if it only recommends 91, just dump 93 in it, just to be on the safe side. Not that's a little bit overkill, but as an engine gets hot, as that fuel gets hot from being pushed through that pump so hard, you do lose some level of resistance to burn, right? Not that you lose octane, but the warmer it already is, the easier it is for it to touch off inside the engine. So if you do have a little bit hotter oil and a little hotter combustion chambers and everything else, it just doesn't hurt to give yourself a little extra octane. Tire pressures. Typically, people run a little bit higher pressure than the street, I would say, but there's a whole lot of conflicting thoughts on what you should run for tire pressures when you're doing track days. So I don't know exactly really how to advise you the best on that, other than just saying, if your owner's manual happens to say it, great. If not, you're going to have to talk to just people in the know that know your vehicle. For the Camaros, it seems like from people I've talked to, people are running anywhere from 30 to 40 starting PSI, which is a big range, but it just depends on their tire, depends on their exact wheel and tire setup. And then these people are, you'll typically see 10 plus PSI of tire pressure gain because the tires get so warm. So just keep that in mind too. Don't be surprised if your 40 turns into 50 PSI kind of thing. So that's just a note there. Now, as far as using your various driving nannies like traction control and StabiliTrak and all that stuff, I would say personally, for your first track day, at least for the first few laps or the first session, I would go ahead and use all those things just to get used to driving around a track. It's kind of a surreal experience when you first do it, in my opinion. So get used to driving on the track. That way your car is kind of helping keep you on the track. And then once you get more used to it, you can turn some of that stuff off. Having a professional instructor go out with you on your first track day, if you can do an event that has instruction tied to it, it'll be expensive, and it's probably worth it. they'll really show you kind of how to drive that specific track and just track drive in general. Your car, whatever power level it has, whatever tires it has. I mean, I've done track days in all seasons. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're still gonna have fun. Before you get all nerding out about performance mods that you might be thinking of doing before a track day, just know that unless you have a ton of driving experience with other stuff, the mod you're gonna need is the driver mod if you want your car to go faster off the bat. So focus on the driver aspect of it, and once you're good at that, then you can start playing with your, rebound dampening and your this and your that, and just keep that in mind. I mean, it's good to set all that stuff up correctly, but it's not going to be the be-all end all. And you want to know how the heck to find and get yourself to a track day. All right, well, I'm glad you asked. So first things first, you need to scour the old interwebs, and if you do that, you will find one company specifically called SCCA, Sports Car Club of America. They host a ton of track days. The way that most track days work that I know of, they're not hosted by the track itself. There's a company or a club or somebody that basically rents that track out for a day and gets people to come to their event. And the same way that NASCAR would rent a track out for a weekend, right? So it's kind of the same idea. So they have track days all over the country in all different times a year. Now, usually, or at least I would say probably more than half of track days are on weekdays, because that's when the tracks are typically not that busy, so they're cheaper to rent. So you probably are going to have to take a day off from work for this. Number two, along those lines, you can go right to their site, scca.com or scca something.com. I can put it in the description, but you just search by your area, you'll find a track. Once you've done that and you've said, okay, I want to do this track day, you just go ahead and sign up for it. Now, I will warn you, none of this is cheap. So it's going to be typically like $150 or so, give or take. Let's call it anywhere from $100 to $300 for a single track day. Just depending on the track, depending on who's hosting it, a lot of factors. But that's just kind of the rough estimate of what you're going to spend. So it's not cheap. I mean, it is what it is. And not that their little training thing is going to, their verbal just driver's meeting is really going to teach you everything, but it's going to give you a very good idea of how to actually act within a track day. So, like a general rule of thumb, right, there's things called, what they call point buys, and, given the level that you're in, right, beginner, intermediate, expert, but there's different rules on if you can let people go by and stuff like that. That could be a whole separate video, so I'm not going to get into that in this video, but just keep in mind, right, you need to be at those driver's meetings, and I don't even think they'll let you in the track if you're not. The other thing you need to think about when you're doing a track day with some of your driving technique, you don't need to go crazy and learn a bunch of new stuff, right? Go out there and have fun, but you might want to learn rev match downshifting. And I only say that because it is a little bit hard to get a standard car into a turn if you're not going to rev match downshift it and do it in such a way that you're not burning the brakes up. So that's the only thing where it really might behoove you to at least learn that skill. And if you can heel toe brake, that's even a bonus, because then you can rev match downshift and be braking at the same time. That's more of an advanced skill that honestly I don't know, and I've tried it before, and I gotta practice it a lot more if I'm gonna do it. But it would be a good thing to know. So keep that in mind too. If you can spend some time and learn that, that might make your experience a little bit more comfortable. I think we've given you a good synopsis of what to expect on a track day. If you have any questions or further thoughts, please leave it in the comments. I'm by no means the most experienced track day enthusiast, but I think that gives me a good perspective for a beginner, kind of from a intermediate or a late stage beginner, if you will. So I hope that's a good perspective. At the end of the day, I would just encourage you, get out there, find one, do one. You're going to make memories, you're going to laugh, you're going to have fun, and it'll be a good time. So anyways, as always, thanks for watching. God bless America. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.